Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Keegan, and welcome back to episode 2 of Turn Over the Tape. As I said before, my name's Keegan. I am joined again by my good friend Matt.
Howdy, howdy.
Howdy. And we are going to run through the AAMI series game. There was only one this year. There was only one preseason game, all about Gold Coast versus Brisbane, take 2 preseason. And yeah, we're going to talk about the game, our thoughts, our feelings, and just sort of how we saw the game overall. It ended up being a 28-point win to the Lions. I've got some stats next to me, and I know we said we weren't going to talk about stats, but I have got the score next to me. And yeah, so overall, Matt, what would you say your opinion was coming out of the game, just overall, just in a very brief summation?
I have a horrible, horrible feeling that this game will be the microcosm for the Suns season at large. I feel like we're going to have a gangbuster first half. Sam Collins will go down, and then we're just going to splutter and just like meander our way to the end of the season, falling into like 10th place. I mean, from what I saw live, there was a ton to like about our ball use when we started to get ascendancy in the midfield, to the point where, you know, my prayers were being answered from episode 1. Eyes were being lowered, targets were being hit inside 50. Yeah. Alex Sexton was getting into dangerous places. Raul was feeding him basically on the chest on a couple of occasions. Your man Brodie was playing really quite well.
Oh, my man Brodie, we'll talk about him later.
When I didn't confuse him for D-Mac, that is. Every single time, I'm like, oh, D-Mac, you're amazing. And then it's like, oh, no, that's Will Brodie.
who's like a whole foot taller than D-Mac. But
but in terms of like the experience, it was hard to be too upset given the fact it was a preseason game. And I completely respect the fact that you need to be resting players that are important. You know, key point being that, you know, Cam Rayner, who knows how long he's going to be out for the Lions. So that's unfortunate for them.
Yeah.
What about you?
I thought if you look at it through the lens of a practice game, and that's what it is, it's a practice game. You use it to try different things. A 28-point loss is fine. It's not about the points scored at the end. Well, it is about the points scored because you want to see good forward craft, but it's about sort of the processes and how you get there. I think if you ask the Lions, would they prefer a 28-point loss, but your players get through all healthy, or get a 28-point win in preseason and one of your young stars goes down with an ACL? I think you'd probably take the 28-point loss and everyone's fit and healthy.
Absolutely.
So overall, I think it was a good experience. It was a good experience, a good hit out. I think the players did well. And we'll probably talk to it a bit more in depth as we go through. But just overall, I think I think you look at it as sort of a positive night of progression and just sort of seeing what works and maybe what doesn't work. So as someone that watched it on TV, I wasn't there, but Matt, you were there live at the ground. What was it like being back at Metricon with a crowd, like a crowd? And I noticed on TV that you were all sort of crammed almost into one like quarter of the stand. So what was it like being back at the footy?
Well, I mean, the way that they did it like that, I actually thought was pretty good, because it actually gave everyone an atmosphere rather than everyone being, you know, dispersed evenly across the ground. We actually got to be near the parochial fans, and there tended to be quite a number of parochial Lions supporters there, you know, just yelling at the top of their lungs, you know, foul mouthed. It was at its absolute peak. So kudos. It ended up having something of a fairly decent atmosphere, although it is weird, you know, you hear a whole bunch of cheering around you and then someone slots a goal at the other end and it lands on like that canvas padding that they have over the seats.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, it came through pretty well. Like you could hear the crowd on the TV, definitely. But I do get your point. Like, yeah, at one end you can see all the people sort of getting up and about, and then on the other end, you just flat canvas. Just I imagine there's just some sort of thud that you hear when the ball hits the canvas. I do enjoy that you talking about the people with the foul mouth rants at a practice game. I do really enjoy the fact that people really get invested in these games that mean pretty much nothing. Outside of a few, that kid played well, this kid played well. They don't really mean a lot, but I do enjoy the enthusiasm that some people do have for them, which is good. I did see a bit of footage as well. My brother went with you, and he put a Facebook Facebook story up and saw a bit of that, and it looks like there was a decent crowd sitting around you guys. So I'm glad you had a good time. I heard the pies were out. Like I heard they ran out of food pretty early on. I read that somewhere.
There just wasn't a lot of food options, which you'd expect given, I don't know how many people were there. It would have been like 3,000 or 4,000 tops. But there was it felt like there was just one hot dog vendor and basically one drinks dispensary, and that was it. And I can't even speak tonight. The hot dog vendor was, lackadaisical at best. Let's put it that way.
Look, one week when we're at the end of the season and where the Suns are like nowhere near finals, and we can't make finals, we will do a whole podcast on Metricon as a venue itself, and we'll rate the food, the beers, the seats, and all that. Yeah, we'll do that before we play like a Geelong or a Richmond or something where we've got no hope. We'll rate the Metricon Stadium at the experience itself. All right, so what were your thoughts on the first half in general? So what were your thoughts coming up to halftime? For me personally, I thought we actually played the first half pretty well. The first the first 10 minutes, the Lions sort of kicked 3 early goals, and we were like, oh no, this is going to be an absolute bit of a pasting. But then the lads sort of started pulling it back together. Raul and Anderson and basically the entire midfield really pulled their weight in that first half. And we looked, as you mentioned earlier, we did lower the eyes and we did hit some targets up, which was great to see. There was one passage of play, I think, down the wing closest to the bench, where I think it went through like Barkov, Ainsworth, a few different players' hands, Miller, and then it ended up into the forward line, right into the hands of Sexton, and he kicked a goal, and that was probably the best passage of play all night. It looked like it's something they'd trained on the pitch, and it worked perfectly. And yeah, so I think overall for the first half, I thought we were really on top of it. And I feel like even Sam Day kicked 3 goals in the first half, which is probably not much. He probably hasn't done that too much recently, but that was really, really positive. And yeah, I don't think I can really say much more about the first half. What were your thoughts, Matt?
I mean, it's funny you mentioned that passage of play, because I'm pretty sure I turned to your brother and said, that's literally the best thing the Suns have ever done. Like literally ever.
It did look like that. And even like Lee Montagna on commentary was like, he was gobsmacked that the Suns actually moved the ball from one end to the other without it hitting another opposition player's hand. So
the thing is with that play though, is that Took Miller lost his footing on one of the steps that he took, but he recovered and ended up putting the perfect handball out. So like it had the opportunity to derail, but composure under pressure for that particular point in time. Much like you, the Lions got off to a quick start, but I got the impression maybe towards the back end of the first quarter and especially through the second, that it almost looked like the Lions were like witches' hats. Like maybe it felt like Chris Fagan had said at quarter time, come on boys, keep your legs. This is a preseason match, chill out. And it felt like they were just slow in the second quarter. Like it just, there was no effort. It felt like there was no effort across the board. So whilst I thought the Suns were good, I thought the Lions were just genuinely bad in that second quarter.
Yeah, the Lions were in the second quarter, not for the whole, but definitely in the second quarter were very, very slow. Probably stuff that you probably couldn't see live at the ground that I could see sort of on the telly was they weren't playing Jared Lyons in the midfield. He was playing on I think he's playing on a wing or half forward. So he wasn't. So one of their big prime movers who we got rid of, and don't start me on that. He wasn't playing in the midfield, and the Lions were seemingly throwing the magnets around a little bit in the midfield. So it probably explains a little bit why we were able to grab some ascendancy in the middle. But I think overall, like, you can't really look at it like that. I think you need to look at it like, wow, the Suns sort of looked like they played proper football. And there'll be teams that will play this year that will be a lot worse than the Lions, that we will be able to do those sort of movements from back to front really, really well and running really well. One thing I did notice when we were attacking is a lot of our play, compared to some of the bits and pieces I saw of the other preseason over the weekend, was that a lot of our play didn't go through the middle. It went round the outside. So that sort of seems to be something that because he seems very risk averse. He doesn't like taking risks. He doesn't like his players taking risks when they can help. And unless your name's Jack Lukosius, and then exactly, you will just put darts through the middle whenever you get a chance. But he likes to go around the boundary. So while we are playing a quick and running style, he does seem to want us to still sort of stay near the boundary, whether that's because we're playing Brisbane, a much better team than us, or whether that's something that's going to carry on through the season. That was just sort of one thing I picked up, that while we did play on and we did move very quickly, there were times we probably could have moved through the middle, and obviously that's the quickest way to go, but we didn't. But overall, again, I think that first half was really, really positive.
Yeah, I get the impression that given the fact that our defense is clearly the aspect of our side that just isn't up to scratch, especially when Sam Collins disappears, you can sort of see why he's a little bit risk averse. You know, you can be adventurous, but you know, there's no need to walk the tightrope if you can just use the boundary line to help you out.
Yeah.
It does make for a slightly less enterprising play, and it requires us to be more skillful, which we haven't been traditionally in order to get scores.
We have not.
But at the end of the day, we still kicked, how many goals? 13, 14 goals?
Yeah, so we kicked 13, 11 for the whole game.
Yeah.
So I think we ended the first half on like 55 points.
55,
like
yeah.
So I agree. I think we did really well. And then our season ended, and we got to the and some people I was seeing on just general social media platforms were like, as soon as that third quarter happened, they were like, all right, Suns are done for the season. That's it. And I'm like, it's a practice game. Like, it wasn't great. And so we'll move on to the second half now. Great first half. Really, really loved it. Thought we did really well. Second half, I think that third quarter brought us back down to earth a little bit. Again, it's a practice game. You don't want to read too much into it. But the Lions basically did what they wanted. Lockie Neal decided that, this is a game of football. Because I think up till halftime, Lockie Neal had about like 7 touches. And then he had about 7 touches in the first 5 minutes of the third quarter. And then put lines in the middle. And then Lockie Neal was like, all right, I'm going to start showing you. I'm just going to start actually putting the foot down. And as soon as they put the foot down, they put the foot through the floor and straight through our throats at that point.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's clearly the problem if Sam Collins isn't there. You can just see our defense isn't organized. There isn't any, there is some composure, some setup, but there just wasn't any, I don't know, there was just a huge missing piece, and it was evident, and it was compounded by the fact that we were now losing the midfield. So it was being exposed on basically every other play. And at the time, as the goals were being kicked, I'm like, if Sam Collins was there, it would have been all right. Until it hit a tipping point. Like, at no point is it ever acceptable to concede 8-8 in a quarter, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know if Sam Collins is 8 goals worth of difference, but he's more than, I would say, 2 or 3, right? Like, imagine he's there. If he halves the difference on 1 or 2, heaven forbid Took Miller, puts the goal through instead of kicking it behind midway through that quarter, and suddenly the numbers stack in a slightly different way.
Yeah.
Shoulda, woulda, coulda.
Yeah. That Took Miller miss was really a killer. Like 25 meters out, 45, not even a 45-degree angle. And you should be slotting that. Like Ammos on a Sunday in 5th division are slotting those. And but I agree with you. I don't think Collins is worth 8 goals 8.
No.
But then as soon as the half started and Collins was off, and I don't want to be slagging off young players, but Caleb Graham is not Sam Collins. No. And as soon as the ball went forward first time, Danaher standing next to Graham, and Danaher takes a mark above his head and kicks a goal. And you could see that
times.
Yeah. And you could see that coming from an up. As soon as Collins was off, I was sitting there, and my wife, who's not really paying attention, sitting next to me. And I said to her, I'm like, Danaher's going to kick a goal in the first 30 seconds. And lo and behold, he took a mark in the first 30 seconds and put through the goal. So, that's not to talk down Caleb Graham. He's a 3rd-year player, so you don't want to be like ripping absolute shreds out of him, but you definitely can notice the difference in quality when Caleb Graham's standing on their best forward and when Sam Collins is standing on their best forward.
Oh, mate, if I had $1 for every time I heard Smoking Joe, I would have had my ticket money back by the time I was out of there.
Well, there are a few Brisbane Lions supporters getting up and about when Joe was getting near it.
Oh, yeah. There was a family behind us, and the kid had this, like, very sweetly spoken, but it's like, that's Joe Danaher. He's taken another mark. The Suns aren't very good, are they, Dad?
You know what? Those cut me up more. Like I can deal with people who've had a few beers in, going, saying everything, slagging the Suns off, having a go at the Suns. I can deal with that. But as soon as a little sweet child says the Suns aren't very good, that just rips me up inside. I don't know why that happens, but I can deal with 40-year-olds on the beers yelling and screaming, but the little kids really are the ones that sort of throw daggers into your heart.
You have no reason to lie.
Yeah, no, they're so innocent. They're so innocent to the world, and that's how they see it. So that was the third quarter. The fourth quarter, we sort of pulled it back a bit. I think the game was dead and buried at that point. So I don't think, and again, it's a practice game. Like, it's really all dead and buried. It's not really a place to sort of compare scores. But I think the Lions had done enough to see that they're going to be fine heading into the season after the third quarter. So the fourth quarter, I feel like they pulled back a bit while we sort of tried to sort of add a bit of respectability to the score. And to be fair, we did. We won 3 quarters. We won the first, second, and fourth quarter. It's just that third quarter issue that has been a Suns thing where we will play okay, we'll play well for 2 quarters, we'll play okay in the third quarter, and then the fourth quarter there'll be a fourth quarter where we get absolutely belted off the park. So I think the goal for this year, and I think we talked about a few goals last week, but I think the goal for this year now, after seeing that, is we can't be giving up goal runs of 10 goals in a game, because as soon the day we keep doing that, and we're never going to win. We're never going to win any good amount of games to make finals. Finals teams don't ship 10 goals.
Yeah, I mean, that's when the midfield really needs to stand up. But in terms of the last quarter, I know it was all junk time, but I do like watching Alex Sexton kick bags, to be fair.
Yeah, I do like seeing our forwards kick bags, because it happens so rarely.
Yeah, exactly right. But there are a couple of like small bags. I mean, like you said, Sam Day. But yeah, Alex Sexton seemed to have a ton of opportunities. Like he could have finished with 9 if he'd kicked straight, which would have been a travesty to do in a practice match. But 6 is fine. He even kicked a set shot from right in front, because he's usually absolutely abhorrent when he's not going check side on the ball, you know?
Yeah. You know how, and this will be really boring to people, to listeners, but you know how I've always said that he's the best snap in the AFL, best snap kick in the AFL by an absolute mile. Now Dermot Brereton's picked up on it. I really want to feel like I'm getting in touch with him, saying, you're copying my stuff. I've been saying he's the best snap kick shot for goal in the AFL for years, because he just is. His drop punts are, without being too mean, are average at best. But you put him on an angle, get him kicking from the side, and he will absolutely nail it 9.5 times out of 10. Yeah,
he just looks comfy 35 out on a hard angle. It's just as simple as that. It just does my head in.
Yeah. What did you think of Ben King's performance?
He got that opportunistic goal. I think it was in the second quarter where he dribbled it through, and I turned to my mate and said, Jason Dunstall would be having a coronary watching that dribble kick, because it mustn't have been far off hitting the post on the way through.
It was not.
The problem is that some of our forward entries were probably a little bit too directed at him, but there were also a ton of opportunities he could have had to really impose himself on the contest. And the funny thing is he still took 1 or 2 half decent marks. Like, there was one he took on the wing just near where we were, which was awesome mark. I don't think he converted, but the mark was awesome. It's tough to get a read. I know that apparently he was getting sort of burnt up in commentary, but He probably could have done more, but it wasn't. I don't think it was an abject failure.
And he was probably the one player that I sort of not disappointed, but I sort of wanted to see a bit more from. And I completely take into consideration that while he was playing on Jack Payne, I think that's his name, from Brisbane, you've got Harris Andrews, who was playing almost as a loose man that was just any bomb. Like Harris Andrews is just licking his lips, and he's just going to come along and cuss it out, and just and I think he's going to have easier days. I think playing on a Payne who's a decent defender, and also having to deal with Harris Andrews coming along and sort of cutting your lunch and sort of just jumping in front, spoiling. I think he'll have easier days. The days he plays sort of more abject opposition, like an Adelaide or a North Melbourne, that'll be where we will see how good he is. Playing on people he should start physically dominating, and then that will probably be more of an indication of where he's at as a player. Again, it's a practice game. You don't want to write him off for that. But
there's a ton that can be said about the synergy between the midfield and the forward line. You look at Richmond, and Jack Riewoldt just knows that the midfield's going to win and sees where the space is and just runs to it. And he might get the ball, one time out of 10 every time he makes that decision. But if he's taking like 3 or 4 marks inside 50 a quarter, he's having, an awesome day.
Yeah.
It's really just a case of, I think that connection between the midfield and the forward line is something that has to develop organically over time and just needs to be consistent. So I just want to see an improvement on last year. And if we dominate the midfield and provide him a bevy of opportunities, it almost doesn't matter how bad he plays, he'll get chances to kick goals. So I don't want to throw it back at the midfield, but I think it's a mix of the two, and probably just more time playing each other in high pressure situations that should eventuate into better returns.
Yeah, I think there was definitely improvement going in the forward 50 for sure. Definitely wasn't perfect though. There were definitely a few bombs there that were silly. But I think there was definitely improvement. And I think he will be better for playing on better opposition. So I think that was my point of view. That was just sort of something I noticed with Ben King, who didn't have a day out, but slowly working his way into a little bit of form. All right, Matt, I had a question for you. Who played? So think about all sort of the players that are on the periphery of the 22. Who played their way into contention? Who put their hand up? To be their round one that maybe isn't an automatic lock?
Oh man, it's a tough one. So I was very impressed. The problem is I'd probably have to rattle through the players that I thought were impressive that might not be household names, quote unquote, because I don't think there are too many Suns players that are household names.
No, of course.
Will Brodie stood out for me. It felt like every single time he had the ball in hand, he sort of did the Scott Pendlebury thing where he did nothing and everyone just moved away thinking he was going to do something, and suddenly he had space and time. So he really represented a very strong hand, even though he had moments he'd probably like to have back. I think all in all, he was actually really quite good. The defense was hard to really get much out of. In terms of people who are on the periphery, I don't think there was a ton that stood out. I think D-Mac probably hurt his chances a little bit. There were plenty of moments where he...
Yeah, I was going to say,
there were plenty of moments.
That was my second question, was who played their way out of contention was going to be my next question. So we'll see. I'm going to get back to D-Mac as well. But
yeah.
So you think Will Brodie was someone that definitely sort of on the periphery that might have put their hand up?
I don't know how on the periphery he was, but I'd be confused if he wasn't seriously in consideration for round one, to be honest.
Yeah. I'm going to, because he was also my pick.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. I'm a big Will Brodie fan. I will add quickly that I think he's Hugh Greenwood he's the young Hugh Greenwood for me anyway. He's big. He's a contested beast. He's got that size. He's bobbing up for goals more. I think he kicked a few in the practice game last week. He kicked one last night. Could have had 2 or 3 quite easily. missed a very easy shot, and then there was another snap that hit the post. So I think he's one that's definitely put his hand up to be around the round one team, which is good. I'm going to give another player a shout who I don't think will be there, but I thought that he in the little bit that he did, that I thought he had some impressive moments, and that was Chris Burgess. As a ruck, he rucked just the last quarter, so this is the last quarter where the game was pretty much gone. But as a mobile ruckman, that gives you something probably a little bit different to Wits. It's probably a bit better along the ground, can also play multiple positions, can play back if needed. I thought that he showed something that probably doesn't get him in the round one team, but if he continues to evolve that role playing in the twos, I definitely think that that's something that he could do as sort of a backup ruckman that also sort of plays as like a third tall defender or something, and gives a bit of backup. He's not going to be playing round one. I'm not advocating to be playing round one. But I think that just as a bit of an experiment, I definitely think that's worth pursuing or worth following up, because I saw enough there in the last quarter where he rucked. He didn't get the tap, but he competed. And then when the ball hit the deck, he was there ready to go, because he's a bit smaller. He's a bit close to the ground. He's bending out, at least competing on the ground, making a contest, breaking even. So I definitely think that that's something at least worth pursuing, maybe in the two, sort of getting that. And then maybe towards the end of the year, because we haven't got Zach Smith for 10 weeks, he's going to have time to practice it. Yeah. So I'm assuming because he's rucking in this game, he's probably going to be rucking in the twos, because I think we've got maybe one rookie who's also a ruckman who's absolutely green, and probably not someone that we can rely on as a VFL ruckman as a standalone. So I think Burgess will have time to practice that role, and I reckon, definitely worth following through. So this will lead me on to my other question, which I was going to go is, who played their way out of the team? Who do you think has hurt their chances, as you suggested, and you had one, so maybe follow on with the rest of that.
Yeah, so I thought DMAC could have done a few things better. It's kind of a little bit, it's frustrating to watch his development, because in a poor Suns side, either last year or the year before, he sort of stood up as an aggressor and someone that sort of wouldn't back down, really, really putting himself into those positions where he did the 1%ers. But I guess now that there's a little bit more quality around him, errors in his play sort of compound and certainly stand out a lot more. He had a couple of half decent moments, but I found myself cursing his name more often than not. And every single time I thought he did something good, it was Will Brodie. So
I don't know if I think that would be the first time they've ever got confused. So,
dude, look at them. And aside from the fact that there's a major height difference, at a glance, especially when you're up in the bleachers, they look the same as far as I'm concerned.
Fair enough. It's funny, like I'm just sort of sitting on the stat, like I'm running up and down the stat sheet now and looking at fantasy scores, which are never an indicator of how good someone's played. But he got 105 fantasy points, which is pretty good. But I still think I agree with you. I don't think he had a great game. I think we made it abundantly clear in our group chat that I think he's really slow.
Yeah.
He's not quick, and he's also not a great kick. And he's also really small. So if you're really small, not an amazing kick, and you're not very quick, then I know he's a great tackler, but then I don't that's not enough to be like, if that's good, if that's what we're rating his forward pressure on, I'd rather play David Swallow in the forward line, who can bob up for a goal, who's bigger, and probably the same speed, not very quick, but his tackling, like a couple of Swallows tackles last night were absolutely brutal, and I really, really enjoyed that. For me, the person that sort of played their way out of the team, I say this in a way that I don't think he'll be out of the team. I think Dew will still pick him. But for me, it's still Jared Harbrow. And don't get me wrong, I love Jared Harbrow. He has been a stalwart for the club since its inception. He should have an award named after him after he retires at the best and fairest night, like the community award, because he does such great community work. But I think it's passed him by. He misses the really easy kicks. And anytime he gets put under any pressure or gets put onto his right foot, he doesn't have a right foot because he's predominantly left-footed. I think that's the right way. Either way, on his non-dominant side, he is an absolute poor kick. And as soon as he's put onto it, he'll just bomb it straight up. And he also gives away really stupid free kicks where he will either tackle and then hold on to them, or he'll get them high or something like that. He's good for one a game. Usually when it happens, I'll be like, oh, there's the Jared Harbrow free kick. Because one a game, he'll either hold on to someone when they don't have the ball, hit them high, or something like that. So I think that he's definitely one that, for me, I wouldn't put him in round one, but I think Dew wants him there. So he'll probably still be there. But that's just my opinion on it. And again, Caleb Graham's probably another one I spoke about, but I don't really want to go back there. I've already made my notes felt on that. But I think overall, I don't think there's too many faults with. There's not like they're probably the three that we've brought up are probably the three that I've got had questionable games. I think everyone else contributed in one way or another. All right, Matt. Last sort of question without notice before we sort of wrap this up because we're nearing half an hour. For this year, I thought that we could have some sort of best and fairest for our podcast. So what we need is a creative name. I haven't got a creative name yet, unless you've got one straight off the top of your head, but we might save that for another week. Let's give ourselves a week to come up with that. But what you can do for me under pressure is from last night, I want a 3 and a 2, 3 votes, 2 votes, 1 vote forward from you. And then I'm going to give my 3, 2, 1, and then we can. And this is sort of a practice when we do it in the regular season, where we might add them together, and then at the end of the season, we'll have like a trophy or a medal, and we can even send the Gold Coast an ornamental medal, and they can hopefully present it to the player. Who knows?
Oh man, it's tough without the stats, but it's hard to look past Alex Sexton's 6 goals in a losing side, so he probably gets the 3 for mine. I thought our midfield was very good in that second quarter, and I think that really should be acknowledged. I thought both Raul and Anderson had half-decent games. Oleg had a pretty good game. I really thought Will Brodie had a good game. Sam Collins, for the half that he was on, organised the defence so well that I'm inclined to give him perhaps the point.
The one.
The one, and then the 2, I'm probably... Raul did some good things. The midfield was pretty evenly shared in terms of their dominance in that second quarter. So I'm taking something of a pot shot. So I'll do the cop out and give it to Raul. How's that?
No, fair enough. So that was 3 to Sexton, 2 to Raul, and 1 to Collins. I'm cheating a bit. I have got the stats next to me. So I can look at the stats and just sort of remind myself. For 1 vote, because I might go and I might build up the suspense. I might go Will Brodie for 1 vote. I thought that he did well. I thought one thing he did really well too was break tackles. Like he was very hard to tackle, and I think we need a little bit of that alongside Raul and Greenwood. Some more contested bodies that don't get tackled easily. So definitely for me, Brodie gets the 1 vote. I think I give Sexton the 2 votes. Because as you said, 6 goals for the Suns forwards, a very rare thing. So I think that's definitely the 2 votes. And sort of I'd like to give a few honorable mentions. Oleg Markov had a good game. I think Brandon Ellis had a really good game as well. He had 31 touches. So he had
31 touches.
He had 31. Brandon Ellis had 31 touches. So I think I could also throw him in there. Lockie Weller also had a very good game, but I think I'm going to have to give the 3 votes to Will Powell. I thought Will Powell played really, really well. I thought that early on, especially in the first 2 quarters where we sort of dominated, he was just intercepting everything. I think he took something like 12 marks. Yeah, took 12 marks. And I would say a lot of those were intercept marks. And it's probably easier for me to tell while I'm watching on TV and probably not at the ground. But his intercept ball was really good. He's got really good disposal as well. He only had it 21 times, so he wasn't a big, massive accumulator. But I think a lot of intercept marks. His marking just looks absolutely, just the way he's got a good leap on him. He sort of gets up there and he hangs there for a bit and takes the mark. So that's my three. They were my 3-2-1. So 3 to Powell, 2 to Sexton, and 1 to Brodie. And yeah, so we're going to probably be looking to do votes like that throughout the season. So once the real season starts, we'll start counting them up. We might even give a few updates along the way. And then at the end of the season, we'll have a insert name here, cup or medal winner. And we'll do that. Anyway, guys, I think that's it. I think we've hit probably a half an hour. So we might leave it there for this week. Next week, we will be looking to do a fixture. We'll do our fixture prediction. We'll go through the games in the fixture. Me and Matt will give our opinions of them, if we're going to win, if we're going to lose them, and we'll see how we figure out at the end. And then we might have a little bit of time for a little bit of a preview on the West Coast game. So thank you for joining us. Thank you, Matt, for joining me as well.
No problem.
And we will see you next week.